Welcome to the Financial Pro Podcast.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whenever you are listening to this. Today, we are joined by a legendary guest expert with a fantastic beard, gorgeous hair, and an absolute genius when it comes to personal branding. Mr. Ash Borland, how are you?
Hey, buddy, that's such a lovely intro. Look at that. And I know just how much you hate my hair as well. So that's a great thing.
Hey, mate, I'm a huge Vikings fan, so it's all good in the hood.
Whenever I do a poll about my hair, you're always the no. You're always the no.
That's just because I like having a bit of fun. I'm a banter man. That's the thing.
Yeah, you are definitely
known for the banter. That's what it's all about. So, yeah, no, thanks for coming on today, mate. I think it's a vital thing for financial services professionals to understand the power of the personal brand. I don't know why I went into radio voice there.
That's because the new mic. He's showing off with his new mic, so it's like it makes him sound 10 times more professional, you know.
Yeah, this is the new microphone, the first episode with don't even know what it is. A Shure something, but
I would say Shrew, but it's definitely Shure. It's not Shrew.
Yeah, hey ho, it is what it is. So just do yourself a more glorified, more justified, more professional intro, Mr. Borland.
Yes, of course, Gary. Of course, mate. So obviously I'm a personal brand coach. So I work with business owners, mostly coaches, consultants, advisors, freelancers. So anybody in that creative one-man band space. And I help them effectively establish themselves online and offline as the authority in that space for that specific thing. I got into it because I was a mortgage advisor, as you know, and started making videos because I got sick to death. Our story is very similar, scarily similar, actually. I got sick to death of being relying on estate agents. I was in the agency at the time, and I just got sick to death of it. And I lost an introducer, and I got really annoyed. And I just picked up a phone and started recording because I was from the performing arts background, and again I would have followed a guy, which was really interesting. You talk all the time. I'd followed a guy from the fitness industry called Jamie Alderton, who you actually shouted you out yesterday. So great guy. And I'd followed his content and watched him rise in the fitness world. And I was like, I'm going to just do that because I know that world. As I started to do it, it grew. And then I stumbled across you and I was like, oh, bastard, somebody got here before me. And from that transition, it's been amazing to watch as your career's grown and gone to like some amazing heights. My kind of creative background took me in a different direction. And last year I went full-time as a personal brand coach. I realized that I knew more about kind of social psychology and branding and marketing techniques in that kind of way as a person than most people I knew. And I knew more about that than I knew about mortgages, definitely. So it was an easy transition and made the move in last year. And literally, like I say, one whole year and it's been stratospheric. It's been incredible, really. It's definitely what I was born to do. Definitely not mortgages. Definitely not that. So like that's anything personal brand psychology, I'm your guy. But anything about ads, maybe not.
Appreciate your honesty, and I think it's there's so many things that we can talk about today that I think will really inspire the audience, because you started off in performing arts. And even to the point, the audience may not know this, but I do, that Ash has stood on a stage in a pair of budgie smugglers' Speedos, showing off his glorified Viking physique that he now hides under.
Yeah. Who told you? Did I tell you that, or did James tell you that?
I don't know, actually. I think we might have had a conversation about it.
I think we have, yeah.
It's been one of those things that I've always said that I would do, but I've just never really got the bottle to do it. And I'm not disciplined enough when there's cake, biscuits, and ice cream around. But that's still another day.
Mate, you put me to shame now. I'm that guy. When I watch you, I watch you work out, and I'm like, it inspires me because I would say I was a fitness model at one point. We did some muscle model stuff and like muscle food stuff, sorry. And but like I watch you now and I think, God, I don't know how you do it. I don't know how you actually have that dedication, because it's hard work. Yeah,
it's just habits and routines. That's the key thing. That's successful in most things. Habits and routines for you around your personal branding stuff. But going back to my original point, it's the beauty is you were doing performing arts, you were doing breakdancing. You've always been kind of in that arena of personal branding, and then you transitioned into mortgage brokering, which wasn't probably what made you go into mortgage brokering.
Truthfully, like I said, I don't really talk about it much. I was in performing. I'd done it all my life. It was the only thing I knew from performers. My family are all performers. And I've always been eccentric and quite happy to be the center of attention in a weird way. And but at 21 years old, so I was professional from 15 and did lots of stuff. I've things like Game of Thrones and Star Wars and big things. But actually, by about 21, like the rejection, I had a mental breakdown. I don't really talk about it. That's what actually happened. I had a mental breakdown because that rejection and the judging of who you are and what you do at such a young age was just, I didn't know it at the time that's what it was. I just thought I just can't do this anymore. And I developed like agoraphobia, like you can't go outside. It was pretty weird. And my dad at the time was head of compliance for Connell's Group. So I was like, well, what can I do? And he was like, you can't sit at home and do nothing. I had enough money to live on because of my acting jobs and stuff. And he was like, well, you've got to get a job. So the first job I went to was an estate agent. And within about a year, I was like, well, if I'm going to do, all that went through my head was like, well, look, there's a broker in the office and he's earning 5 times more money than I'm earning, doing the same hours. I'm just going to do that instead. Got into mortgages that way. And that's how I ended in mortgages. It was purely fluke. Like my dad's an IFA, originally by trade, but it was pure fluke, like square peg in a round hole. But I play characters. So that was my character for that time. I was very good at being the mortgage broker. But like that's how I ended up into it, which is very strange looking back at it. But yeah, it was a mental breakdown that pushed me into it. Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, so I didn't actually know that, which is savage.
No, it's good.
I'm
quite open about it
now.
No, yeah.
Know better at you now. So okay, so the one thing I want to pick on, because before we get into the importance of personal branding as a financial services professional, because that's been a massive differentiator to me. There's going to be people that are listening to this, as you know, that are potentially employed in a job wanting to go self-employed, or because of the current climate of mortgages that we're living in, maybe hating the job, maybe not enjoying it as much, or even financial services professionals who have been through a similar journey to you and just realize that actually they're not following their true passion. They're doing it for the wrong reasons. How did you make that transition from being in financial services to then becoming a personal branding coach?
It was not an easy transition, and it was probably like very similar to yourself. I can imagine from an outside looking in, it can look very, gosh, these guys are doing everything all the time very well. It was really odd. It took time. It took time. For me, what happened was when I was a mortgage broker, I met a guy. So this is where it kind of started for me. I met this guy that came and saw me, who was a mortgage broker. He was not a mortgage broker, sorry. He was one of my clients, and he turned up. And this is what kind of set me on my path of where I wanted to go from this. Was I met this guy, and he said, I remember looking at his pay slip, and it was ridiculous. Like, it was ridiculous amount of money. And this guy was just like 35 years old, really nice, just really like would not look like he was, a 7-figure earner. And I was thinking, and I remember saying to him, I was like, at that time, I was like, I've got to ask you a question. How the hell did you get to do what you do? And he worked for Vodafone as like it was like he was a specialist, a consultant in that area. And I said to him, how have you done that? And he said, well, I don't have a degree and I don't have any qualifications of any kind. He said, but I worked at Carphone Warehouse. And he said, and what I did, he said, was I worked at Carphone Warehouse. And when 3G came out, I became obsessed with the topic. And he was like, I became obsessed with this 3G topic. He said, and what I did was I learned everything I could. The depth of knowledge, just I've become an expert in this one thing. He said, and I did it just because I enjoyed it. But what happened was, because it was such a new thing and I was an early adopter, I rose through the ranks. And the next thing you know, within about 5 years, I was on 7 figures a year because I was the only person who knew as much as I knew about that thing. And that story stuck with me. And he was a great guy. His name was Scott. And that story in my head the whole time was like, I need to find my 3G. Like after that thing, that was always going through my head was like, what is my 3G? What is that thing? Because I'm dyslexic, but I'm passionate and I have hard work ethic, but I never had the thing I needed. So personal branding, what was that transition was once something started to gain traction that I was passionate about, that when I'd done the research, not many people were doing, that was then that thing of, this is my 3G. So there was a backstory behind it. So I would say, and then I was like, I know, because I've met people as you start to look, that if you do commit to yourself to that one thing, you can get there a lot quicker than many other people and side cut it. So that's what my transition was when people were messaging me. And what I also noticed was when I was getting less leads and more brokers messaging me going, how are you doing it? That's when I was like, this could be the 3G thing. If I trace back some of my content, it's quite funny because it was about 3 years ago I started making videos, and if I trace back about 18 months ago is when I started, not only that, 2 years ago where I started to like create how-to content for other people. And that just got more traction than the actual mortgage videos. So at that point, it's like a business decision, and then the all in was COVID. When COVID hit, it was a choice. Do I work every day in an industry? I made it an obvious choice for me was, COVID. I'm a dyslexic broker, and you guys know, and you're saying what you're going through with COVID right now with advisors. I just wouldn't have survived that. So the criteria changed and stuff. So I was like, okay, what do I do? Well, I'll go in on the 3G all in. So I think what it is for the advice that anyone I would give for that is just find that one thing that you have got an early adopter on. But it took about 4 years to find it. It really did take 4 years to find that thing. I was working as an advisor for 4 years looking for it. It wasn't like the next, which it wasn't the next big thing. I was like, I'm going to do that. It was just and you notice, you probably do the exact same thing with yourself. When you start getting a bit of traction on something, you're like, okay, this could be it. And that's what it was for me. It wasn't, never intended it to be personal branding. I just knew it'd be something.
Yeah, you merged a passion into effectively your profession, and it's that whole thing I talk about on here around it being a satellite navigation. You didn't have a clear idea of where the destination is, but since you got clear on that destination, everything's managed to transform in a real short pace of time. You've still got the RDS road journey along the way with the speed bumps and the road bumps and the traffic and everything else, but the transition is that point of when you were feeling frustration, anxiety, worry, that maybe you weren't in flow, as they sometimes call it, or you weren't operating in your superpowers. You knew that it wasn't necessarily right. And I would imagine now that most of what you do doesn't feel like work.
Not really. 90% of it doesn't feel like work.
Yeah. And that's the key thing for anyone listening, even from a point of view of building your financial services business. As an advisor, for me, I still do the odd mortgage every month and the odd life insurance just to keep my status. But for me, it's not what I want to do every day. It's when you know the small amount of components, what I teach in my coaching, when you know your vision, you build your marketing, you process it, you put a system behind it, you bring people in to do the stuff that you don't love. You then focus on the sales, you then focus on the business. And that's what's going to happen, wherever you're at. Get rid of those little things that you don't love with a PA or whatever. So the power then of this personal brand. Let's reverse a question that you asked me when I came onto your Personal Branding Secrets podcast, which you'll see nicely advertised in the background.
It's on everything.
If you're watching the video, you will. So what is a personal brand and why is it important?
Personal brand, what is it? To be honest with you, I'll give you my one. It's just reputation management. That's what I class it as. But there's lots more behind it. Why is it so important? Just before we talk about what it actually is, to make it simple, why it's so important? Because I believe if you want to future-proof your career and future-proof your career in any way you go, it's the only thing, in my opinion, that's going to protect you. That's only purely belongs to you. It's going to protect you when we move forward towards a more digital world, because nowadays, if you're trading in a more commodity-based business, that's only going to be time before someone automates it, makes it quicker. Gary creates a process to make it disappear, anything like that. So in a good way. So for personal branding, it's so important is it will future-proof your business, because if your name has value then, as opposed to everything else. And when I say about reputation management, All I mean by that is personal brand is building a personal brand is about being the number one person that you think of when you think of a thing outside of that space. So if I think football, for example, I don't like sports. If I think football, I will think David Beckham. His personal brand is universally linked to something that is global to everybody. And so building good personal brands, you anchor to things that people want, and then over time you can become synonymous with that, and that's how you can hack it. So like mortgage, even though you're like now you're moving to other things, and you can pivot that and change that. That's how you do it. You can, and it's that's when I talk about management. It's not so much like PR and things, but it's about reprogramming your audience to only think of you when they think of that generic thing.
Okay, so if you think football, you think David Beckham. If you think mortgage, or if you think financial planning, or if you think pension or will, the idea is for that individual to almost associate themselves with that particular product, really, or service.
Yeah, exactly. So like this is something that I talk about quite a lot, which is like the personal brand ecosystem. So a good person, like an excellent, let's say an excellent, like a 5-star personal brand, is that every time I bump into you in the shop, every time I see you on the street, every time I see like you with your kids, I want to be thinking about that thing you do. That's how you get leads. Where, when you ever meet people where you'll generate leads, because like I work with a guy who used to do it all the time. He'd be in the pub and he'd get business. He'd be in the shop and he'd get business. Everywhere he was, he would generate business unintentionally. They were like inbound leads, not just in his inbox, but in the street, walking his dog. And that's because, and he was an estate agent, that was because he'd connected himself with Royston, which is a local area to where I live. Royston, Tony Green, he was the guy. If you needed to sell a house or buy a house, you spoke to Tony Green. So some people don't like that. It's not for everybody, because it bleeds into your personal life hugely, because you can't go anywhere without that. But if you're a one-man band business, for example, a pensions or an IFA or a broker, you want people to look at you and think, oh, I need to review my mortgage. And it's quite hard to do, because we all are different things to different people. So and that's the issue with social, is if you put too much, then you want to put a bit. It's like a really like balance. You want to put a bit of your personality out there, but you want to infuse your personality into your day-to-day work, so that it's like, so I always use you an example is, you're a fitness guy, so you're always in shorts, and so it's very obvious that you could be talking about whatever it is, say mortgages, if we're going back to mortgages for when you're active, but I knew that you're a fitness guy. You didn't tell me you're a fitness guy. I could see you were, but I wasn't thinking of fitness when I was looking at it. I was thinking of mortgages. Because if you cloud that too much, and we all have that, we've got our friend, we all have our football friend, our rugby friend, our school friend, our drinking friend, our family friend. This is personal brand. It's happening. But if you play an active role in it, we're going, every one of those people, I'm actually their mortgage friend, or I'm their IFA friend, and you'll get business from everybody. And a really great way to know when it's not working, and this happens to lots of people, it's happened to me, it's where I kind of found it, was when you have a family member come in and see you for an appointment, but they're never going to use you because, well, I'm not going to use you because, well, it's you, Gary, I'm not going to, no. That's not anything to do with finances. That's that your brand to them, you're not in their eyes the advisor that they need. And that's a breakdown of your personal brand for them. So it's quite around, like all over the place, really, with that.
Do you think there's a problem for people in really associating their personal brand to the job title in that way?
I think that it's like a systemic problem to do with corporate, especially in finance, that you must be like that work and personal life are separate, and that you must be professional, and you must have a tie, and you must have a suit, and I think that also I think that's a systemic issue that's been historically it's going. You're going to see that disappear with groups like what you've got with the academy, and you're going to see that happen slowly. But I think the problem with financial services, particularly, is it's a very old guard industry. Accountants, the same thing. So there's a lot of people who don't, this kind of concept doesn't really fly with them. So if you do decide to do it, as you would know firsthand, you are massively going against the grain. You know, I couldn't imagine what it'd be like when you went to the Mortgage Strategy Awards for what you did. I mean, most people wouldn't even, you're not even allowed on, you know, to do social media. You're up there winning an award for it. It's going to cause a lot of people to go, oh. So I think there is a lot of struggle with that right now, but I think most of it's in people's heads. I think, you know, like people, a lot of stuff I'll come across I'm trying to keep it mortgage specific or like financial specific. They'll go, oh, it's a boring industry. Well, it's not boring. You just decided it's boring because society has told you it's boring, but it's not boring. And actually, you know, I've got clients like one of my clients, Carla, she's dressed in a superhero outfit and jumping around doing insurance. She's killing it. You don't have to be what you think the world sees you as, because if you are that, you'll never stand out. No one's going to hire you. Well, they'll hire you, but no one's going to win. The way that I could talk about it forever, but just the one how I realized it, you talk about my hair and my beard and things, was I worked on a high street with 5 other agents, with 5 other brokers. And how it kind of clicked for me was I can either be one of 2 things. There's 1 in 5 chance of me winning that business, or I can be completely tattoos on show. I will swear with my clients. I'm like full on. And the moment they walk in, this is where performing arts, I guess, comes in. They're going to have an hour of a show. They're going to experience me unfiltered. And a lot of people would say, well, that's a bad thing. Don't do that. You know, it's unprofessional. But actually what that did was that made it now a 50-50 chance of me winning that business, not a 1 in 5. That was a 50-50, because now it was not a choice of which advisor should I use. It's, do I think Ash is a dick, or do I think Ash is brilliant? Never in the middle. He's a dickhead or he's amazing. I want more business because you do that. And that's probably the same thing that you've done. Well, you have, because that's how you generate, you know, you polarize. But that's fearful. It's a bit like, I don't want a niche because I want to work with everyone. You know, it's that feeling. Yeah. Commit and go, because you'll be better off for it, definitely.
Now, the thing I want to pick up on with this conversation is the difference in your eyes between a personal brand and a business brand.
Yeah, interesting.
How in this conversation do the 2 actually work together?
It's interesting because I'd like to hear yours on this as well, because I know we actually spoke about this in Clubhouse on Friday. I think it come up, so that was quite as interesting. Some guy was slaying that Michaela, so I was like, okay. I think it's interesting. I know a bit about business branding. Obviously, a lot of the stuff transfers across. I think, though, but like I'm a specialist in personal branding, so I'm definitely not a specialist in business branding. I think that depending on what you want is really interesting. I don't think it's a good idea to brand your business, your name. I still don't think that's a good idea, because I think you should associate your name to the business very strongly. But I think that the way I like to see it is a bit like if you had degrees, you've got like major and minor degrees, and people specialize in something and they have their minor. Your business brand should always be your minor. Not always, depending on what you want. If you want to build a personal brand, then your personal brand is your major and your business brand is your minor. That's definitely, from what I pick up from you, that's what happens. Gary Das is the point of the spear, and the rest of the stuff is being dragged along with that relate to that, and they prop you up. I don't think it's possible, though, to do both of them with the same amount of effort together. I think you have to make a choice. Either you are building your personal brand, and with that, you're going to bring your business along with it, or you're going to build your business and you might build your personal brand separately as a little bit of a side thing. But the thing I get a bit funny with quite a lot of people with this is, most people, if you're a one-man band, or you've got maybe 3 or 4 advisors, or you've got like an admin or something, a lot of people, and this is interesting to hear your take, because it might be different. A lot of people go, well, build for the business you want. But I think you can miss an opportunity by thinking that you're going to sell your business and go, no, I'm not going to do that, because I'm going to sell my business, going to make all this money, and I need to make sure. The truth is, you could have done that and just build active, but your business is so much more valuable because you are Gary Das. And I think that that's what I speak to a lot of people at the beginning, is like, I think you should really focus on your personal brand, unless you have, like, if you came to me with like 40 advisors, then I'd be thinking, okay, we need to look at this a bit differently, because like yourself, but most businesses, and I think that might have been the question on that Clubhouse one that got my head up on it, was I think many people are thinking of this business they want and not actually the business they have. And they could be missing a ton of potential, and that personal brand might actually get them to the business they want. So I'd say you have to let them, but definitely don't name your business your name. That's the definite thing, because I think as you said about Neil Patel in that group, that's what you're saying, that he'd probably wouldn't have done that again if he'd done it differently. The issue with naming it your name is that you do end up become a slave to it if it gets really big, hugely, because it can be a real problem. So I think separate the two definitely, but have one as a major and one as a minor.
Yeah, the reason why I wanted to ask you is because I'm just intrigued as to where you saw it. For example, you are Ash Borland. You are known as the personal branding guy. You've got your brand behind you in terms of personal branding secrets and everything that comes out underneath that. You at the moment are merged, one entwined effectively.
Yeah.
Which, if I go back on my journey, 2016, it was Gary Dass, and it was a Facebook page called Gary Dass Mortgage Broker.
Yeah.
And that gave it the opportunity to fly much quicker because people knew it was me who they were doing business with.
Yeah.
But I realized in June of 2018 that if I wanted to, stop people coming in all the time saying, I want Gary to do my mortgage.
Yeah.
Social media efforts, with 8 advisors at the present time, they still come in saying, I want to speak to Gary because it's me who's done all the content. Now, I've got a strategy that's going to change that going forward, leveraging the business brand as active. But the fact of the matter is, the personal brand makes things happen much, much quicker.
Yeah.
And the ability of being able to turn around, even though people are messaging me on Facebook, and bearing in mind, at the present time, I haven't done any content on mortgages for probably over a year.
Yeah.
All the existing content that's working. When someone messages me and says, oh, Gary, I need to speak to you, I can turn around and say, look, I've got an award-winning mortgage brokerage. Here's the link. We've got a team of 8 advisors. I've got an operations manager in place. Send me your name and number because I'm going to put you in touch with a bookings team. Based on the strategy that you have, the property you want to buy, the route you want to go, I have got an expert who I know, who I can vouch for, who will look after you. They go, okay.
Yeah.
Because it's the personal brand that's endorsed the business brand to do that. So if you want to have something that lives on beyond you and builds beyond you and has a power beyond you and can have people underneath it, you have to build your business brand alongside. But the beauty is if you only go in with the business brand, it just won't get as much traction because
100%.
when you go and see an accountant, when you go and see an estate agent, when you go and see an introducer, or when you're dealing with a client, it just doesn't have that personal nature alongside it. So I would much rather go with personal brand, 70%, business brand, 30%, knowing that you've got the opportunity that as that starts to change, I'm probably 60-40 now.
Yeah. Yeah. There's more. You definitely do a lot of, but I'd say you do a lot of personal brand stuff. Like I know you as Gary Dass. I don't, like you said before off air, like I don't know you as the financial guy anymore because I wouldn't follow you for that. I know you as a business coach in my mind. You're like a business coach, and that's what I would class you as, like a high performance business coach. That's what in my mind. So it's changing. As I always talk about the pigeonholing, it's changing already.
Yeah. But it's the funny thing is I say I haven't done mortgage content. Obviously, I'm a speaker and a trainer for the largest property training company in the
I was going to
UK.
say, you're always there. So you talk.
I'm in business owner groups left, right, and center where I do my content that nobody technically knows in the public eye. It's like going to that networking meeting every single week where you're able to have multiple different brands in essence.
Yeah.
And that's the thing I think is vital. You have to have a business brand alongside your personal brand for the same reasons exactly as you said. And when you want to start recruiting, people in your own journey and maybe getting other people and training them how to train others on personal branding, whatever your decision may be, from the audience listening to this, the personal brand is just going to make you get leads quicker. It's going to make you get sales quicker. It's going to be the differentiator between you and the next mortgage broker. As you said, when you're in a commodity-based industry, you are the differentiator. So I love what you said as well in terms of your client who's bringing in the superhero stuff into the content. And I want to get into a little bit of the how.
Yeah.
So what's kind of, we've given a lot of reasons as to what a personal brand is. It's you versus the company, and there will be a massive crossover in that early phase.
Yeah.
We've given the why you need to realistically build one, which is to make everything happen quicker, to make you get more leads quicker, to show who you are, I think is a vital thing that we haven't said. People resonate. People like you will like you. So I don't know if you've seen this with the other clients you work with, but I've got a client who I'm helping to generate leads and build their business, massively into triathlons. Won awards, got trophies, got a bike on a wall, literally got like a shrine wall in his house.
Yeah.
Have you ever seen it in any of his content?
No.
And it's like, where do you think that features in to the personal brand aspect from a why perspective?
I think it's massive, but I think it needs to be done tastefully. It needs to be done tactfully, not tastefully, sorry, tactfully. So like, I'll use you as an example because I think you do it very well. You're always on the bike. So you're always on your bike and you're always doing training, you're always training, or you're doing something in your stories. Now you're not going, a lot of the time you're not going, I'm on the bike. You normally might be doing an update on what's going on the podcast or the business whilst you're on the bike. So these are the things you're passionate about, you should be infusing into your content that's business related. Like definitely, like so like people in the city, if you ever look on this, all of this is, I'm a big Star Wars fan. This is all Star Wars stickers. Now, you don't know, I don't know if you know or not, it doesn't matter. But if you are not a Star Wars fan, that doesn't matter. It's not offending you. But if you are a Star Wars fan, you would see it straight away. And I've won business from people where I'm like, where they've gone, is that a sticker? I'm like, yeah, it is. Now, the reason why I say it with that is that you need to create these subtle cues in wherever you are. And a great thing with that is walking around. If you're doing videos where you're walking around, if you've got a guy talking and your business owner client and he's talking and behind him is all of the bikes on the walls and stuff, people who know will know and they'll be drawn to it. The issue is if he starts making content where he goes, this is my hobby and I love bikes, I'd be like, okay, but I'm not actually following you for that. So this is a bit confusing. So you have to bring that in. I signed my insurance with somebody because they had a Lego Death Star on there, but obviously not, but there's other reasons. But I was like, oh my God, that's a Lego Death Star. Yes, it is. I'm really into that. I was when I was a kid. I was like, when I was a kid, I used to have that, and we started getting into rapport. So bringing your personality through is super important, but subtly, because it can actually deter people as well. So like that's something reason why it's very important. Obviously, there's other hows and stuff, but that's what I would definitely say. The thing that I meet when I and probably like you've said with your clients, I'll be speaking to them. I have one client, and he'll say he's a gym owner, fitness guy. Now his name's Neil. He's a good client now. I've been working with him for 9 months. He's a little tubby guy, and I'm like, okay. And when I first signed him, I was like, yeah, all right, fine. I'll work with you. But as I started to get to know him, turns out he's done like 7 Ironmans, and he's an ultra marathon runner. He's won awards. He's done it. And I was like, bro, like that. And I was like, this is super interesting because I relate with that because you're a high achiever. You need to talk about that more. And so we changed the whole thing. We rebranded. He's got the Fat Man to Iron Man podcast, the whole thing, because he wasn't now just a funny looking personal trainer in regards to like, you look at like Jamie Alden. He didn't look like some Adonis. But he had a thing about him that he wasn't telling anyone because he was like, well, it's not really relevant. I was like, it's hugely relevant. And I think that's what you find with that was the same with you. It's probably why you did very well. You brought fitness in. You brought your family in. So you're a family guy. You look after your health. So truthfully, the reason why I resonated with you, I don't think I would have followed you if you hadn't mentioned Jamie Alden's name. I would not follow. So that's a huge example of the fact that you'd mentioned someone who normally people would say, I don't like that. Because you mentioned Jamie Alderton, I was like, this guy is on my wavelength. Because if he likes Jamie Alderton and I like Jamie Alderton, then I think we're probably going to be in the same boat. So if you hadn't done that, I wouldn't have known you, realistically. So that just shows the power. It wasn't that you were talking about mortgages on a video, because there's a lot of people doing that. But it's because you mentioned something that I'm into as well. And I think that's probably most of the people you've won, I'm sure, is because it's not to do with what your actual business is, but the other things outside of it. So that's what I would say. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's that part of the brain, the reticular activating system, the part of the brain. We're friends with our friends not because of the job that they do, but because of the commonalities that we have, the values that we share. And I always go back and talk about my childhood. I had my football friends, I had my school friends, I had my athletics friends. Now as an adult, we've got our friends. I've got my core 5 friends, as I call them, who are just we're buddies and we've been buddies for years. But then I've got kind of my gym buddies and I've got some business buddies, and we just talk about the same things. But I think in life we have those circles because you never get a whole thing from one person.
Yeah.
My wife hates fitness, so I'm never going to get my through chatting about fitness with my wife.
Yeah.
I'm never going to get my snowboarding fixed by talking to a few other mates because I've got my snowboarding friends. And you just have to appreciate that in your content marketing efforts, people are liking you. So this whole element of I've got so many clients who are in fitness and in personal training because they see that stuff first and they go, exactly as you said, there's a commonality. What other stuff has he posted about? Oh, he's a mortgage broker. Oh, he does coaching. Oh, da 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 da. So it's that whole thing of people are naturally nosy. People are naturally inquisitive. So if you talk about from a personal brand perspective, the things that you love, the things that you enjoy doing, the weird little hobbies and quirks that you have, the other people who have the weird little quirks and hobbies, dodgy haircuts,
Dodgy haircuts and Lego. I don't have Lego. I don't have money to buy Lego.
Yeah, you talk about those kind of things, and the thing is, I only say it because I have massive respect for the fact that you know who you are and what you do, and it's great to share talking about this stuff that's so important.
No, I agree. It's only banter, mate. Gosh,
exactly.
And it's. I think I agree with you on it because you are. Yeah, I agree with it because I think what I find quite interesting, and this is would be interesting to hear your take on this, is people might watch you as a pro because you're like the pioneer. You really are the pioneer of that space. You were the first one. I joke at the beginning. I didn't know that you were making videos, and then when I started typing it in after I'd done it, I was like, oh crap, I had been beaten to it. Funnily enough, when I heard your thing, my wife, she said to me, because she told me to do it years ago, said because of Jamie Elton, she was like, I told you. But the truth is, the reason why you were successful was not because you did videos about mortgages. And I think that's something a lot of people don't grasp. It's because you've tapped into all of those things. All of those things you just said then. You were showing people, because the joke is most of the people who watched you were mortgage advisors. They weren't actually, because that's how you built your other business. It's not just the fact that, and that's when you speak to me, I don't want to do that. So talk about the my client doing the superhero stuff. I don't want to do that because I don't want, it's not professional. Nothing you did was professional. Everything you did was really, it was very maverick. It was like, fuck the system. It was very good. And people would tune in to watch it. And I think that's what people need to understand. That's why it was successful. I watched a great YouTube video about this guy talking about, it was a YouTube coach guy. And he said to make a brand work, for example. And he was saying that he works with his tow truck company, which is really strange. He said, and they vlog their tow trucks. So whenever they're out and about collecting and then, picking people up, and he said, they would vlog it, and they had no subscribers. Who wants to watch that? It's terrible. So he was like, it's terrible. This guy's a big YouTube coach. And he came in, and he was like, he's moved them to over 100,000 subscribers very quickly. And he did it because he said, you're not a tow truck company. You are rescuing people. And it's a story of adventure and rescuing people that are trapped. And he flipped the script as to what he was doing. People are drawn to a story. Your story was not Gary talking about mortgages. It was, is Gary going to, is he going to win the award? Is social media? It's a story that people feel invested in. And I think that's what people miss when it comes to their branding. If you just do a jargon buster or it doesn't mean anything. You have to, that's why people are so intent on your podcast at the moment. We want it to reach number one because we're all invested in it reaching number one. You bring them along for the ride. And I think that's where the personal branding thing is interesting, is that if your content isn't working, it's because you're missing the story element 100%.
That's a great little add on there. And it kind of gave me a few shivers when you were talking about that, weirdly, because it's like that weird thing of just, it's the documentation of the journey. And that's kind of what's created the personal brand. And, you know, for people who don't know that are maybe joining this podcast late or whatever, if you've listened to earlier episodes, I've definitely talked about it before, but I didn't use social media in 2015. I didn't have a personal brand. If you went back to my Facebook and I share the odd memory or two, you will see me sharing posts. One picture of me in a suit and tie and corporate Gary, and another one with me in a t-shirt and saying, which do you prefer as a mortgage broker? And it was always 50-50. You know, it was, you know, there's other images of, oh, shall I get this tattoo? Shall I do that? And exactly as Ash said, you know, reflecting back now, it's just that documentation.
Yeah.
It's just being consistent with, this is what's going on in my life right now. This is, we're having a baby, we're moving house, I'm launching this, I'm talking to this client, I've had this scenario. And actually, you're right in the sense that the personal brand has been 60 to 70% of the leading there. And then there's always been the weaved in stuff around the product or the service or the business or whatever along that way. So for anyone listening, I would say getting into a how for you, the first thing you need to do is just start realizing that you're not creating content. You're just telling the story of your life, what you're doing on a daily basis. And a real cool thing I've told a few people to do in my coaching recently, which I don't know if you tell yours to do, but it's worthwhile, is particularly with Instagram stories. People say to me, oh yeah, but it's really boring. It's really done. I say, every time you change space, try and show people what you're doing.
That's great.
Like if you're making a cup of tea, just shove that up. If you're going into the office, just document that you're doing that and put something cool with it or funny like that. Like I share, now I've got my home office. I put a little thing up saying, oh, here we go on the commute. And it's me just walking 30 feet. You know, it's just like people look at it and will just laugh because you're having a bit of a joke about it. But just when you change space, that's a great thing to document, in the same way as when something happens and it happens consistently every day, the thing that goes wrong, the thing that goes right, the thing that works, just share that and see what happens. The thing that really pees you off, the rant, share that.
Oh God, your rants are like the, and I think that's interesting because it's a compounding effect. You know, like the truth is, you know, I've been following you for like 2 years. We've been friends since from the beginning, really, because from messaging when you wrote your book, I remember. But I'm invested in it. That's what's really weird. I'm invested in you doing well, not from a opponent, but because I've invested time. And that's what people don't realize, because it's the same with everybody. We all have that. Someone will be watching you, as in whoever's listening, they will watch you, and you think that no one's watching. The best thing with stuff like that, you think no one's listening, and then you have your events, and then it's like, oh wow, loads of people were listening. But it's that investment of it. It's, you feel like you've been part of the journey. It's no different than, like, I'm a big Ed Sheeran fan, and I'm local to Cambridge, and he's Sussex, and we used to watch him when he was like £5 at the junction in Cambridge. So we'll happily pay £250 to watch him because he's our boy from Cambridge. But it's because we're invested in it, because it's the story. It's not his songs. Couldn't care less about his songs. You feel like you owe them because you're involved and they were the pioneer. And I think that's what people miss. That's a how, you know, you're very right. Show them behind the scenes, and do sprinkle in a bit of the family and do that. But the great thing you can do is, like, it's about positioning it. It's using the content pillars, you know, and content lenses type thing, that you're looking at it in a way of like, I like, you know, if you're watching a film, you'll say night off work. So we're bringing it straight back in, the fact that you're always working. I'm always working, but I've got a night off. But I'm then looking at it going, it's still in line with your content, still in line with what you're talking about. You're still the guy who works hard. You're still the business coach, but you're watching Fast and Furious. And it's like, oh, okay, I like Fast and Furious as well. So you can bring these things in. Whereas if you were like, here's a photo of my kid, you're like, okay, that's a bit straight. That's kind of juxtaposition. But if it was like you doing a thing and saying, I'm going to do my work now because it's Hunter's birthday and I'm going to get in there to help him, the next video is you at Hunter's, but that's boom, straight away. It's like, it's relevant. It's leading them on a journey. And I think most people, the execution is wrong on the how. It's telling that story, definitely.
Yeah, and I'm invested in your journey as well, because I've seen you go from mortgage broker to, you know, following on with this personal branding element. And let's be honest, there's an element of us that are in competitive spaces. We teach similar things, but I'm all about collaboration. I'm all about support, and I'm invested in you, seeing you raise your prices. I know. You keep telling me in the messages.
The
outcomes people get, mate, are too good from what you're working with. So on that note, let's get to some proper practical Ash Borland hows for the people who are listening to this. We've given so much why, and if you guys aren't invested into doing a personal brand now and understanding the difference, then please send me and Ash a DM on our social media channels, because we need to understand how we've not given enough reasons so far in 45 minutes. But
Exactly.
Ash, what's your hows? What can people do straight after this to start working on a personal brand and starting to really bring some leads into their business?
Yeah, first thing that I say that people need to really do, there's the three principles of personal branding, like core principles, that, like, everyone needs to just kind of get their head around straight away. There's clarity, consistency, and patience. Now, the first, obviously, the patience thing, you'll leave it to go. But the first thing you need to do is get super clear on what it is you actually want, like what it is you're trying to achieve. Like, that's a super. And how do you do that? Well, the way I did it was I would write down, and this is how I started at the beginning. I wrote down what I did. So I wrote down, for example, and actually you were funny enough in this, was I wrote down things like I go live every day, I do this. I wrote down what it is, and then I wrote down why am I doing it. Now, if you haven't got a good enough reason as to why you're doing it, so this was back in, say, a year ago, I was going live every day, and it was literally like, why do you go live every day? And I was like, well, because Gary goes live every day, and it obviously works for him. That was literally the answer. And I was like, that's not a good enough answer. And that's, you have to really look at yourself, is if you're just copying what other people are doing, or you're seeing people who you like success, modeling, going, I like what they're doing, I'm going to try that. If there's not a good enough reason behind you doing it, it's never going to sustain. And I'd say get clear on what it is you want to do. And one thing that I love about this, which was the advice that was given to me by a graphic designer, was the best things, the best designs. And he said, it's the same with business. He said, it's not about how much you can add, it's about how much can you take away, and it still is great. He said that's what people get, they throw more on. I work with clients. So what my thing is to try and just get clear and just trim fat. So literally, if you're like, I've got a podcast, I've got this, I've got that, okay, what do you want to be known for? So for me, it's the video guy. Like, I want to do video. Like, I want to do podcasting and video. I have zero interest in blogging, zero. And that's what you have to think with your client, with yourself, if you're trying to take action, is what is that one thing? We talk about that one thing you want to be known for. I want to be known as, and being the mortgage guy or the financial guy, it's not going to be enough. You need to be like the really deep, like I wanted to be, I joke, my thing was, I want to be the digital Viking. That's what my wife used to say. We're like, I'm the digital Viking. I want people to look at me and go, and that was like, this guy knows everything about branding and he looks fucking weird. Like, that was my kind of mindset. That's super clear. Then I take steps as to how I can do that in a consistent way. So that's the thing, you have to get clear on that one thing. And it should only be one. I don't think you should do any more than one if you're trying to build your brand. And then you can layer that on. You can watch someone like you, Gary. You're 5 years in the journey. So that layers every year. There's a great guy called Mike Kim who says he treats his years like they're Chinese calendars. He said it's the year of the dog, the year of the dragon. He said, like, I think of it like that. He said, I think year of the podcast, year of the YouTube channel. Like, give it a year, super clear. And then consistency. If you've picked that one thing, turn up every single day, week, whatever it may be, but do it consistently. You don't have to be the best. You just have to be the most seen. And on average, it's like 8 or 9 online interactions before someone's going to buy from you. It's roughly around that. So you just have to outlast everybody else. And the best way you're going to do that is if you're going to focus on one thing. So that is, I know it might sound a bit woof, but the biggest advice is, there's not like, you need to do a YouTube channel, you need to do this, you need to do, it's none of that. It's literally like, what do you enjoy? Because you said, to take you back about what you said with me, do I enjoy it? 90% of what I do, I love. So what do I enjoy? And how can I make that the best I possibly can? And as clear in the message I'm trying to deliver as I possibly can, and deliver it on a consistent level over the next 5 years. And if you can do that, then you'll win. You'll win, because everybody else is doing the whole, how many times has this happened to you? I've sorted Facebook ads now, Gary. Well, I need to do Instagram now. What do you think? Instagram, that's the next thing. And you're like, okay. Whereas, like, I worked with a guy and we just went, what do you want to be known for? I was like, I don't like all the suit and tie and all the fancy adverts. I was like, okay, then let's make videos that are just purely like, let's make crap videos. I was like, let's just make terrible videos. I was like, they're awful. Like, they're like, as in they're edited. I was like, let's do that, because you don't want to be known as a fancy editing guy. So you want to be known as the guy that just picks up his phone and talks straight into his phone. Getting business. He's getting clear on his message. He knows now what he wants to do. That was obviously one that you gave to me. So that was like a one from your side. He's getting clear on his brand. He knew that that's what he needed to do now. He's like, okay, I'm the guy that does videos into the camera. You were the guy who wore shorts and, pushed social media. That was your thing. Jokingly aside, I was the guy that walked his dog. I used to walk a lot, and people would go, I love your videos, Ash, because you're just walking. That was it. So it's not that hard. Just be super clear in what you want to be. That's like one. Obviously, there's tons. I don't want to get too deep because you'll be like, but you can ask me any questions on top of that. But hopefully that makes sense.
100%, without a shadow of a doubt, makes perfect sense in the way in which it is. You have to have clarity. You need to understand what's most important to you in your life and start producing stuff around that. And I think the vital thing that often gets misled or misunderstood is that comparison with others. Like you said, You can't compare yourself to someone who's 5 to 6, 7 steps ahead of you. You have to appreciate that it's going to take you a while to get to those 5, 6, or 7 steps. My 2016 and my 2017, all I used was Facebook.
Yeah.
All I used. I didn't use any other social media channel. It's the one that I'm now consistent at. The way in which I look like I'm on more channels than I am is because I have a team now that repurpose me into other content and put me elsewhere. Now, I'm actually at a phase now with a marketing team where I'm starting to put a little bit more effort into each individual channel personally, because I have the time to be able to do that, because my role is more marketing, and I was going to try and combine marketing and strategy, but that wouldn't work. My role allows that, and it's what I want to do, and it's what I enjoy. But this is the thing that Ash is really saying. Pick one channel, get super clear on how you want to be perceived by your audience, forget the norm of financial services, and do your thing. What would you add to that, Ash?
I'd say to add to that, there's a couple of things. One thing on what you said before about not looking at others. You're going to, you say look at others and going, actually, like, they're doing this. People are always going to be ahead of you, and I'm really open about that. And you shouldn't ever be jealous of what they do. You should be looking at if they are doing it, it means you can do it as well. That's a really good thing. And I talk about this, and I'm very open on this show with you, is that's you for me. You are 3-4 years ahead of me in what your business is and where you go. And and we spoke about that like through WhatsApp and stuff. When I see your podcast hitting those numbers, when I see what you're doing, that's inspiring. And that's exactly the same thing for you guys. If you're looking at someone like me, or you might look at someone like Alex Kerr, who does video on YouTube, Alex and me and you, we all started in the same spot, but you are never going to catch them up, because they're always going to be, unless they stop, they're always going to be ahead of you. So be around those people, because that's iron sharpens iron. It's you with Rob. You surround yourself with Rob Moore. You're never going to reach Rob, because when you're a millionaire, he's going to be a billionaire. It's that kind of thing. But if you surround yourself with those great people, that's going to help you get more clarity, because you'll see what they're doing. That's one thing I definitely would like to point out. The other thing I would say, though, which I like, which is so true, you said, is get clear on one thing. You can repurpose to others, but I'm a big advocate of repurposing, but it's creating one thing. So it's that thing of, like, if a podcast is your thing, then just do a podcast, but then you can use those clips and use them everywhere. But don't try, unless you're like at your level, which is where the optimal level is contextually relevant content on all platforms, which it really, if you want best results, that's what you have to have. But that'll take you forever. But you definitely should. Well, it would take 5 years to just even start to crack that point where you're like, okay, now I'm going to give, like, all these platforms are difficult when you start to look at them properly. There's not one that's easy, not one. So master one, and then just throw content on the others, because you might get something from it. But then as you level up, as you say, just pick a new thing every year. Just, okay, I'm going to focus on that now. YouTube is my focus at the moment, because, Alex made it work. So I can't have that. So we're going to do it. But it's true. Like, if you look at you, it's Facebook. So I think you get super clear. And the one thing I would add to that as well is, if you show up all the time as the guy for that thing, when you feel like, I want to post something that's not related to that, stop yourself and post something related. I get put onto so many podcasts and get asked and interviewed by so many people who are much bigger than me, and I'm on their shows, and I'll ask them either on air or off air why, and they're like, when I first saw you, I was like, okay, cool. But then when I saw you do more consistently talking about personal brand every single day for like 90 days, I'm like, okay, I need to speak to this guy because there's something that he knows. They've probably watched none of my videos, but it's the persistence of my live video going, Ash is live, Ash is live, Ash. They were like, I've got to chat to you. And that's the thing. It's that like slowly building the thing of this has got someone I need to speak to. And that's probably happened with you as well, as in with yourself. Like people go, who is this Gary guy? I've heard his name. Probably happens on Clubhouse all the time. Who is Gary? He's always in the room. He's always in the room. Who is he? That wins. That'll road down to the point where they'll go, you're the only guy that I need to speak to.
Yeah,
it's happening with TikTok with me now.
Again,
it's happening with TikTok right now. You know, you're talking to me about TikTok off air, and so you're like, oh, TikTok. Well, that's just because I'm constantly showing that I do TikTok. So you can do it with everything.
Yeah, and you picked that one channel last year, realistically, didn't you? That was your one thing then. You've mentioned YouTube is your one thing now. You can't be an expert at all, and the more you spread yourself thinly across multiple social media channels, the less results you're ultimately going to get. And at the end of the day, for a financial services professional, it is about lead generation.
100%.
It's about marketing.
Yeah.
And I think the other thing we haven't touched on is that element of you can be super clear in the sense of, I do financial planning for such and such. I do mortgages for fitness professionals. I do wills for such and such. And you can literally merge your personal brand into your business brand with one client type if you want. If you play golf, then hang around with golfers and talk about mortgages related to golfers. I was on the course today talking about a mortgage. I was doing this today, doing that. There was a saying that Daniel Priestley has said, who wrote a great book, probably one of the original ones around personal branding. But he says, you get what you pitch for, and you're always pitching.
Yes.
So the ones who turn around and say, I'm not getting enough leads, it's because you're not pitching it enough. The ones 100%. Who turn around and say they're not getting the ideal client, you're not pitching it enough. Yeah.
You're so right. And I just to add on to that, like you say, you find that your niche will come to you if you want it. Like, the thing that I love, like this thing with yours with Active, and it's the same thing with me. One of my outside of work passions, I'm a big video gamer. Like I am. Not right now because I've got a son and that is never going to happen. But me and my wife, that's what we like to do. We like to play Call of Duty. We're quite into esports. It's our thing. My goal would be to work in that space, in the branding space with those. Well, actually, because I show up and I contact with those people and I mix with those people, I've had meetings with the government. I've had meetings with all these different people and now work within those organizations, helping some of their players and some of the streamers brand themselves. That I had no connections in that space. You just go after it if you look like it. And that's why this setup was designed this way. It looks like a gaming setup. So any gamer would go, they make a lot of money. So there's a lot of money in that industry. So it's like, that's what you can do. So if if you're the triathlon guy, like if you're an advisor, for example, or like you are someone who's into golf, you can niche in the thing you enjoy. Like 100%. One of my friends is a mortgage advisor who niches in performing arts. He was a performer. He came off, became a mortgage advisor, did performing arts only. It's great. Does really well. All of the training that he did completely relevant because he knows the industry. And I think you can do that. So if you're one of these people who are like, I hate my niche, but I've chosen it because it's the best one, no, pick your niche because you can talk about it every day. Because then you can talk about the latest news. Your content's a lot easier then. I can talk about the latest things happening here, there, and everywhere. Because of that reason, that's why you do with fitness. It works. You can really do it.
Love it. Thank you, mate. It's been a real pleasure having a chat with you today around personal branding. And I think it's really, really vital that financial services professionals understand the difference and start sharing themselves and what they're up to. The beauty of doing it the way that we've discussed today is compliance isn't so much of a major issue because you're just sharing what you are doing. You're taking people on a journey. This week, I helped 25 clients to do X, Y, and Z. The one common problem they had was this. That's a great piece of content. That's just documenting your life, and that's not compliance orientated. Yes, there is going to be content that you have to do that needs compliance checking, and you want to put risk warnings on and all that kind of jazz. But you don't do that content all the time. As a final little point, Ash, one last question for you. What percentage of content do you think should be personal branding, and
Yeah.
what percentage of content should be, i.e., business looking to target the product or service that you sell or have? If
Do
you
you
were gonna
know?
break it down.
Yeah, if I was to break it down, do you know, I'm always changing on this as to which one I think is right or wrong. When I very first started, I was like 100% no personal and 100 and like all in on business. Does well, but I think it loses track. I watch yours. I think yours is higher. I think yours is a lot higher than what I would normally do. But I'm taking a bit of a leaf out of your book on that because it works for you. So I would actually say, I would probably go as far as to say like 70-30. Like it's actually normally I'm say like 95-5, but I think maybe five, if it's 70-30, out of that 30, 5 of that can be like full blown personal. But I think 25% of that can be like a little bit more maybe like observational or not so much coaching, like so like for me, like I might do stuff about like The Rock or look at like personal brands that I like and analyze those, but like talk about them a little bit, or like showing kind of passion. I think you can show your passion through things like that way. So I think it's probably more 30% with like I say a 5 of that being really like full on, here's a photo of my kid or my dog. You don't want to do too much of that because I think it'll it's okay, but it just can cause a bit too much. What it is, the reason why I don't say to do that, if you start to do too much of that, it's not that it's a bad thing. It's that you start to look more like a normal Facebook profile or you become a normal profile, and you don't want people to be looking at your profile as if you're a normal person. You want people to be looking at your profile as a specialist. That's the only reason. It's not that you shouldn't post that, but it's that you want people when they jump on your site to feel, or your page of any kind, to feel like everything they get is dripping with some form of value around that specific thing. So it's not that it's wrong, but I'd say probably 70-30 now. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the reason why I get away with it as well, for the caveat for the audience, is I've been at social media since 2016.
Yeah.
That's the thing. So when I started out, I would say that most of my content was really focused on business.
Yeah.
70% of my content would have been speaking to the target audience. So over the course of a week, Monday and Friday would have been all mortgage related content or all financial services content. Then the weekends would have been about family, for example. So just try and remember, again, comparing that journey to where I am now to where I was, start off with 70% of your content being focused around the product or service that you want to sell as a personal brand, and then dripping in the other points. But over time, the more you get known for it, as Ash said, you might have to go through 3 months of only doing content related to your business to build that profile. Then you can start to filter in extra posts around that other thing.
A really great way, I know we've got to go, but the really great way that I use, it's kind of my personal brand kickstart challenge that I do with people. And it's for you, your listeners, if they want this, if they're not, and this is people who are like, this is designed for people who are like really not confident on camera. They don't really want to go on camera. The best thing to do, I like to say, right, I do this thing called a daily rundown. And I got this from watching a program. I hate Star Trek, but it was on TV. There's a comic that, like, it was just on TV. And I was like, oh, but the guy said, I'm doing a captain's log. And I was like, what a great idea. Like, as a content, and this is where it came from, is I do it for anyone I work with or stuff like that. We'll always start with what I call a daily rundown, which is 3 things every day about what you did that day, just a written post. And if you do that 7 days a week, every day, you will actually generate a ton of interest, because what it does is it hits in an ecosystem. It hits social proof, it hits network, it hits getting that personal side, because you will, if you're writing, for example, like today, if I did it and I was like, I've just been, 3 things I enjoyed today. I was on a podcast with Gary. We spoke about this, and I tag you in. What you start doing is creating this kind of network of people. So 3 things every day that you did. If you spoke to a BDM, if you submitted some mortgages, if you did it, whatever it may be, you will be documenting through written word and tagging everything that's happening. And then what's lovely about that is, naturally, if you do it 7 days a week, it naturally moves into this kind of, without the percentage being too much, it naturally moves into what you're actually getting up to at the weekend. So you're with your kids at the weekend, or you're doing, it's a really lovely way to get that kind of understanding around it. If you're scared of posting video, it's just great. It's quite hard if you don't like writing, but it's a 3 posts, 3 things that you enjoy doing that day, and think about bragging. It's social proof. It's everything. It's really, really useful.
Love that. Love that. So great tips there, everybody. But I hope that's given you huge amounts of value in terms of what you can do. You've got ways in which to change your space within stories. You've got ways in which to start bringing in your passions and your hobbies into your content in your daily life. And you've got 3 things that you can be posting about as they're happening. Your daily story exactly has been shared there. So if anybody wants to build their personal brand, Ash, where do we send them to from your profiles, etc.?
Best thing, either you can connect with me on LinkedIn, but the best place to go is on YouTube or the podcast. So Personal Branding Secrets, both on YouTube and on any podcast platform.
Awesome.
That's
and
where
you've
the
got a
best
Facebook
place is.
group.
Not really anymore.
Oh.
Get clear on the, getting clear. Like, so that's one of the things I love. How is it delegate? Was it delete, delegate, and do? Is that what you were saying before? Like, that landed on the delete list because it was just too much effort. It's hard to run a Facebook group. There will be a new one coming soon once I have more clarity on where I actually want to do with it. The problem with Facebook groups is, you probably know yourself, you're the man with this. When you bring too many people in without fully understanding what the group was for, I'd built it without any conception of idea of it.
Yeah.
It got really hard. So I'll do a new one with a more focused approach.
So reach out to Ash on Personal Branding Secrets podcast, YouTube, or via LinkedIn. Ash, this is the Financial Pro podcast. You know it's coming. Perseverance leads to results, which creates opportunity. What does pro mean to you?
What does pro mean to me? It's hard, mate. You always throw me that. I had not prepared for that one. Why did I not? And I've heard it so many times. What does pro mean to me? Pro is somebody who, I don't know. Pro is just doing everything to the high standard. That's what I would say. If you're a pro, you're doing everything to it's a high standard. You're achieving. Yeah, there you go. That's a good one. It's high standard. It's clarity.
Clarity. So doing everything to a high standard, ladies and gentlemen, that is what pro is about. I hope you've enjoyed this episode. Make sure you go and check out Ash's podcast. Make sure if this is the first time listening to the Financial Pro podcast that you go back and get all the inspiration that you need to build a more successful financial services business. Ash, thanks for being here today, my friend. Lovely to chat to you as always. We'll see you on another episode.